we're going to talk today about why online dating sucks to attract beautiful women, and quality women too, really. That's what I mean when I say beautiful women. I mean beautiful inside and out, right? Why online dating sucks to attract beautiful women and what to do about it instead, okay? Big problem out there in the world that a lot of guys reach out is not getting results, certainly in dating, but especially in online dating, okay? And so when we take a look at this problem, we're going to break it down step by step, what the problems are, and then ultimately what I think, what I advise is the best solution to this issue and what's really going on deeper levels as to why guys aren't getting results with it and why it just may not work in general for a lot of guys, okay? And so I'm going to talk about some strategies to help you with overcoming this issue, and so you can really attract that quality woman inside and out, that beautiful woman. You know, I like to use the term, I just want to break that down real quick, you know, attractive, hot, beautiful, right? To me, they're different. And if you're in part of the email list, you'll see that I use, you know, hot and beautiful because, you know, that's one indicator for us as men of something we generally want in a woman. Attractive, there's cute, there's hot, there's beautiful. To me, beautiful is kind of the pinnacle. It's like she has the looks to your liking. She has inner characteristics as well. Hot is just like, boom, she's just like hot looking, right? She's probably more feminine or has some way about her, you know, physically, tends to be more physical, or maybe she's got a sexy sauciness to her that adds to that hotness. And then attractive is kind of this, you know, a little bit toned down, and cute is kind of around there for me. But, you know, eventually, no matter whether a guy wants to date around casually, even have flings or friends with benefits, eventually a guy wants a quality relationship with a quality woman. And there's flexibility, of course, on the looks a bit more when we're talking about inner qualities, but we don't want to settle, right? And I know that in my past, women that have been beautiful to me weren't necessarily beautiful to other guys. They may have been attractive or cute or even hot in some ways, but not beautiful, right? So that's what we're talking about here. I just want to make that little side note on the beautiful woman thing. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this. The problem with online dating, well, you know, one of the biggest problems is just simply not getting results. You know, guys sending out messages, sending out sometimes hundreds of messages to women and getting only a few responses and sometimes one response. I've had guys say like 1 in 100, 1 in 30, right? Even just a response, let alone a date, okay? There are guys that are able to get out on dates. However, the women aren't physically as attractive, or they don't look like their pictures. Some of you guys have experienced this. I know I have in the past. I'm not an online dater really these days. Did it a few months ago. It's not my thing. I don't want to spend the time, nor do I have to, with the way I do things. And so that's one, right? Get out on dates, not with it, and or, you know, not getting the sense of who the person is because you haven't met them in person, right? So two main issues are, one, just simply not getting very little response and no dates. Two, getting dates but not with the quality of women that you want, right? Not getting with the quality of women. A third one could be an age range related factor a little bit, usually with older men to younger women. The problem is also that they can filter out on a lot of these apps, not all of them, not all the sites, but more and more. They can pick their age range so you won't even show up in their matching if you want to go younger. And what ends up happening a lot of times too is with like the apps like Tinder and Bumble, is when you get to a zero numbered range, like a 40 or a 50 or 30, there's a cutoff there. So even if she might date a 40-year-old and she's like 29, as soon as you go to 41, she cuts it off because there's like a psychological thing that goes on there, right? So then you're not, and you could even look younger than guys that are 37 or 35 and be in your 40s, or be a guy in your 50s and look like you're in your late 30s. I talk to guys like that all the time that reach out, right? And so they're like, yeah, I want to date some younger women. Usually, most guys in their 40s and 50s don't want to date women in their 20s. They want 30s and 40s, maybe 50s, right? Guys in their 60s, if you're here, probably want 40s and 50s, right? But that filtering, that age filtering can really play into it okay? Younger guys can happen, but, of course, there's the cougar phenomena, and there's a lot of older women looking for younger guys actively, and usually, guys don't want to go too much older, and then their age range when they're younger. Not, even 10, like 25 going to 35, but going up to 40, I haven't really heard of that happening so much necessarily, or 45, certainly not. So, these are kind of the problems that go on. And then, what's even worse about it is that we just have to talk about, for a second, the saturation factor that women receive being online. If you've ever done, so I actually was around at the start of online dating in like 2004, okay? And there was a site called Lava Life that I was on. It was one of the first ones that was more popular, and they did advertising and all that stuff. I don't know if it's still around anymore or not. And I remember, like, I had a roommate at the time I lived with in New York, and I remember, like, I had my desktop computer, right? And I was doing it, and I was like, it wasn't when online dating was popular. There was some shame and taboo around it. But I was afraid to approach women, and I was like, that was my solution and all that. And I wasn't very good, really, at having the confidence to meet women in person. And so I remember my roommate coming in, he saw the screen, and because it had a distinct red and kind of white screen, Lava Life, like red lava, and he was like, he's like, "You're on Lava Life. I've seen those ads. What are you doing, dude?" He walks in, he barges in my room, like, "What?" And I'm all ashamed and stuff, but I was getting dates and with some reasonably attractive women, some pretty attractive women back then, right? However, that was 13 years ago, pretty much, 13 years ago. And as you know, the game has changed. So many more apps and sites, right? I think Match might have been starting around then. I never actually did Match. Plenty of Fish, OkCupid, at least around like 2004, 5, 6. There was one called Hot or Not. There was other little ones that people were starting to try to use. MySpace. Facebook came around in 2006, I believe, in the international sense. And then, of course, the more modern versions. And eHarmony was supposedly the relationship one. And some of these are still around, surprisingly. And then, of course, you've got your dating apps now, like Tinder and Bumble being two of the bigger ones, right? And so the saturation factor that occurs with having so many guys reaching out to women. And so I actually did an experiment back then, maybe it was a few years later, where I created a fake profile as a woman with no picture, guys, with no picture. And I got hit up by, like, within a couple hours, like 20 or 30 responses. And very little on my profile, like, hey, baby, no picture, guys. Now, that hasn't fundamentally changed because guys, I want to call it the dating porn phenomena. So, porn, you can go out to internet porn, get porn, you could jerk off and get your, fire off a load and get that taken care of. Certainly, done that. I don't have anything against it as long as it's not a problem and it doesn't become an emotional block to dating and seeing women and all that. I'm not here to judge that. But transfer that over to internet dating. It's kind of like, okay, guys are like, oh, great, I'm going to go start up and I'm going to order up dates and I'm going to get these hot chicks, right? Because they show these hot pictures on the ads and stuff. But that's not the case, right? And part of this is the saturation factor because, guys are often too afraid to approach women, afraid to be rejected, right? If you scroll down in this group, you'll see a poll I did on the biggest fear: rejection, abandonment, loneliness, all these things, and rejection won out. And that's typical for guys. So because most guys are afraid to talk to women, interact with them, approach them, whatever, in person, they go online as a solution. But then all these other problems open up that it's much more difficult to get through all these kind of, gates that are put up through age filtering. So you got to get your profile right and you got to get the right pictures and all this stuff, which you can do. But there's a whole lot simpler way to do it, right? And so those are the things that, we're really up against, not let alone trying to get her attention because of the guy she does match and responds to, then actually how that conversation goes to get her on a date, if she even looks like her pictures, if she hasn't, porked out or if she hasn't, isn't, those pictures aren't like 10 years ago, which I hear all the time, like, oh, dude, like these women are not like their pictures more often than not. And so it's like a waste of time. And then then it starts to feel hopeless, and it's like this online thing isn't for me. It seems like it'd be a time saver, it becomes a waste of time because you're not getting results, right? And so, and let alone the sites want to charge you, there's all that thing, right? Ongoingly and all that. And so what we have to understand here is that, first of all, that attraction for women is far more based on behavior and your vibe than it is on looks, age, or money. Now, I'm not saying those things don't play into it, depending on the kind of woman and her kind of value system. But guys have this real misconception, especially around money. I see it all the time, that that's all that women want. And that's not true. That's not true. And it's not the primary reason a quality woman, right? A quality woman is going to be attracted to a man, especially if, like a lot of guys talk to me, one of the important things is that a woman is self-sufficient, which does happen more than ever these days. Women can make their own money, right? And so if she's a beautiful woman who's a quality person and takes care of her shit, and you want that kind of woman, and she doesn't have to make tons of money, whatever, but she's self-sufficient to a degree, then money is not going to be of a huge concern to her or a main concern. Right, and usually it has to do with, hey, the guy, he has a stable job. He's not in debt and broke and being irresponsible with his money, which is a sign often of being, not taking care of himself in general sometimes. Okay, but then we can also talk about hygiene. We can talk about these simple things when we go to looks. And guys, you got to be this good-looking model, which I actually hear much less than money. This whole you got to be good-looking model thing, when a lot of things can be cleaned up very quickly, stylistically very quick, and with grooming. I've seen guys on the internet where guys are complaining about these women. This woman wouldn't even check me out, and he's got a sloppy shirt with like stains on it and white, and he's like his hair's all over the place, and he's complaining. I'm like, dude, think if a woman showed up like that, guys would even think about approaching her? Doesn't make any sense to me. But that's a victim mentality as well. Okay, so we have to understand, again, that the behavioral thing, I don't want us to use the word hack, but it's really appropriate here. And so this leads to the first thing, which is you got to meet women in person, guys. You got to line up your social life in congruency with that, okay? It's not hard to do. It does take some effort if you've been for years stuck in the same cycle of your routines. If you don't have good social circles, you're not a social guy or social enough guy. You don't have to be the most social guy, but you can learn to be social. And I get two main types of guys coming to me. Let's talk about three. Actually, three. And the one is a variation of the other. One, I get the shy guy who's shy with women. He's generally okay with people, but he's shy around beautiful, attractive women. Okay? And then once the women get to know him, he's a quality guy. Okay? And they're actually attracted to him, but he's so shy at first that he'll like self-sabotage, avoid talking to women, all this kind of stuff, right? And so because of that, there's no inroad. He's stuck and can't move forward. But if he just got over that shyness and confidence issue, boom, the floodgates would open. And these women are actually waiting for this type of guy. But because he's got confidence problems, and because he doesn't have a good vibe, like the kind of initial vibe right, then the women, nothing happens right, let alone on the approach. Okay, that's the first guy. The second guy is a variation of that guy, and he's the guy who is not only shy, but he's also not so good conversationally moving forward. He doesn't open up. He might have some really bad habits. He's probably not good with people in general, and he's got more social anxiety and social awkwardness going on. Fixable, and I actually have case studies of guys that have helped like that. But sometimes these guys have real psychological issues about their own self-image and stuff. Fixable, but harder to fix, more work. Okay, you got to be really committed. And then there's the third guy who is he may or may not be an extrovert. He might be an ambivert, which is kind of halfway in between the extrovert and introvert. He might even be a little introverted, but he's actually okay with approaching, or has found a way to with approaching beautiful women. He doesn't have a problem on the initial. But this guy does some things after that gets him into the friend zone pretty quickly, or things just don't pan out with the women, and or he usually has some kind of neediness going on later. He can relate to the beautiful woman at first, but it turns into him being needy. And that can happen with the second guy. It can also happen with the first guy too, as well. It can, but it may not with that first guy, okay? He actually might be more non-needy when he gets down the line and be able to kind of cool out, right? And so the first one is you got to focus on meeting women in person. And there's so many advantages of it. Let's talk about the advantages and the disadvantages too, of which I think there are a few, but there's one primary one. And the benefits are you get to hack all the things that you think online dating is helping you do, or the things you have to try to put in place for a quick, McDonald's decision of this guy swipe, no, yep, no, based on a quick picture, because there's an impression, there's a presence that you give when you roll in as a confident and attractive version of yourself, right? And if you're not, because with how attraction works, so I got off track a little bit. I'm looking at my notes here, is that confidence and that knowingness that you're, fundamentally, of course, we all have our insecurities, not perfect, but that you're an attractive, sexy guy, that you have a lot to offer, that can come through in a look, in a vibe across the room. She's like, whoa. Where a good-looking guy or a guy with money can be needy, and then he tries to override it by talking about success and I've got this house and spend, or a guy who's good-looking, he's got to be super-duper good-looking, and if he's really shy, even then, she's going to have to feel like she's putting up with a bunch of stuff, right? And that's very rare to see a super good-looking guy out that is having women flock to him without him having some sense of confidence. And yes, maybe his confidence comes from his good looks. He associates it with that, but that's not the point, because it's all about how you associate your confidence. So if you're not, I'm not a model good-looking guy, but I also understand attraction doesn't work this way. I assign my confidence to, I know how much it can be overcome and how I can do far better than guys better looking than me, that even if they have that initial confidence, they get needy down the road and things fall apart, right? Which leads to stop chasing women and the needy behavior of chasing women. So what you need to do is interact with these women, but don't chase them, right? Don't chase these women. The needy behavior precedent starts early on and follows down the line throughout the whole relationship and in very subtle ways. So you can't be needy, you got to interact. And so that's why it's so key. And what all the pickup products and dating products that want to give you all these fancy techniques and all this shit. You got to develop your inner confidence. You got to develop your charisma in a way that aligns with you. You don't have to be like a George Clooney or Robert Downey Jr. I mean, it's not bad to role model, or Brad Pitt, or whatever you want to say is a charismatic, James Bond. You don't have to. You got to have your own version of that. But you have to be able to express yourself to a certain degree. And here's the thing is that guys that talk the most aren't necessarily the most charismatic, by the way. It's not true. You've got to develop your presence and your sexually magnetic vibe, which I often talk about, which starts with having that solid self-image, right? That solid self-image. And if a guy is really unconfident, then there's some work to do there, right? The self-image, the self-esteem, which means self-estimation. And then it's flirting and connecting with the woman in a way that isn't chasing her, but even can imply or suggest that she chases you, okay? Now, again, all that I'm talking about here about meeting women, what's the one big disadvantage? Well, one big disadvantage is you have to overcome your confidence shit if you have confidence problems, your neediness shit if you got neediness problems. You got to work through that psychologically. You got to. And it's all for the better of everyone, including her, right? But all the advantages are then you get to hack through all the numbnutses online that are, clogging up the pipes for you with these women. And you also get to see and sense what quality of person she is, and she gets to experience other factors that come across in person. They're transmitted through energy, through vibe, through behavior, through a look that just doesn't happen online, okay? So, and this has played out for me and guys I've helped in so many ways, to where it becomes easy, it becomes effortless, because you stand apart, A, from all the guys who are underconfident, or B, needy, and even if they are confident, they're doing a very pursuit-based thing, or they're flashing and flaunting their career success early on or even too soon in a way that either attracts a gold digger or actually turns off a quality woman, turns her off, right? Or she puts up with it to get some free dinners, and then she goes off and sleeps with and hangs with the guy while she's in transition out of a relationship or whatever, into a guy that's really of quality for her, which, right, you want those values alignments anyways. So I just want to check what time we're at here. What time are we at? 21 minutes. Wow, just flies by. So that's what you got to do, man. You really got to focus on working your social circles, becoming more social if you're not. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing, but there's so many more benefits outside of dating, even though that's the main reason you're here, that will play into it. Other factors that play into her being attracted to you by seeing that you can relate to people okay in a way, and that you're able to relate to her and not put her on the pedestal, like I talk about in my free online workshop, my masterclass too, okay?